Ambassador Krelthor stood before the viewing platform, his forearms folded in satisfaction as the massive hangar doors groaned open. The humans had finally accepted the Galactic Council's invitation to witness the pinnacle of military engineering, the Zathari battle mechs. "Behold," Krelthor announced, his translator rendering his pride into perfect English, "the ultimate expression of warfare technology. 300 years of development, neural-synced pilots merged with quantum processors, each unit capable of leveling a city." The dozen human delegates stood in silence as 3 60-foot-tall mechs stepped forward, their movements fluid despite their tremendous bulk. Plasma cannons rotated on shoulder mounts. Energy shields shimmered across reinforced titanium plating. The ground trembled with each footfall. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human delegation leader, adjusted her glasses and studied the machines with an expression Krelthor couldn't quite read. The Zathari had expected awe, perhaps fear. Instead, she looked almost thoughtful. "Impressive," Chen said finally. "How fast can they move?" 40 kilometers per hour in optimal terrain, Krelthor replied. "The neural interface allows reaction times of, and the pilot training period? 15 standard years. The mental conditioning alone requires interesting." Chen turned to her colleagues and Krelthor noticed something peculiar. Several humans were smiling. Not the polite diplomatic smiles he'd grown accustomed to, but something else, something eager. "Ambassador," Chen said, "would it be possible to arrange a demonstration? Perhaps a friendly competition?" Krelthor's sensory stalk stiffened. "Competition? You wish to compete against our battle mechs?" "If you're willing," Chen replied. "We brought some equipment of our own. Nothing as advanced as these, of course. Just something we've been working on." Pride swelled in Krelthor's chest. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage. Barely 3 decades since first contact. Their technology was primitive, their understanding of quantum mechanics laughable, but they were enthusiastic, and the Council had instructed him to foster good relations. "Very well," he said. "Shall we say tomorrow? A simple obstacle course through the training grounds?" "Perfect," Chen said, and that strange smile widened. The next morning, Krelthor arrived at the training grounds to find the human delegation had been busy. A massive transport ship sat on the tarmac, its cargo bay open. Several humans in coveralls were performing final checks on something. "What?" Krelthor began, his translator struggling to convey his confusion. "That's Jessica," said a young human technician patting the machine's leg. "Or rather, that's what Jess calls her mech." Krelthor stared. The human machine stood barely 20 feet tall, a third the size of a Zathari battle mech. It looked almost skeletal by comparison, all exposed hydraulics and minimal armor plating. Where the Zathari mechs were imposing monuments to military power, this looked like it had been assembled in someone's garage. "This is your competitor?" Krelthor asked. "One of 3, Chen confirmed. "Different pilots, different designs. We figured variety would make it more interesting." The other 2 human mechs were equally bizarre. One appeared optimized for speed, with reverse-jointed legs and what looked like thruster packs. The third was squat and heavily armored, but still half the size of the Zathari units. "I must warn you," Krelthor said diplomatically. "Our mechs are designed for actual combat." "Perhaps we should adjust the parameters. We'll be fine," said a woman climbing into the skeletal mech. She wore a simple flight suit and a neural interface crown that looked disturbingly primitive. "Ready when you are." The course was designed to test every aspect of mech combat capability: obstacle navigation, target acquisition, tactical positioning, and close-quarters combat simulation. 3 Zathari battle mechs took their positions, pilots synced and systems armed. The human mechs looked almost comical beside them. Krelthor raised his hand. "Begin!" What happened next would be discussed in Galactic Council chambers for years to come. The human mechs exploded into motion. Not the calculated powerful strides of the Zathari units, but something wild and unpredictable. The skeletal mech, Jessica, vaulted over the first barrier using its arms, twisted midair and landed in a roll that should have torn the machine apart. The speed-optimized unit simply ran. 40 kilometers per hour? It was doing 80, 90. The thrusters fired in rapid bursts, each movement controlled with impossible precision. The heavy unit charged straight through obstacles the Zathari mechs were carefully navigating around. Impossible. Krelthor whispered. The G-forces alone should. Humans can handle about 9 Gs before blacking out, Chen said beside him. With proper training and equipment anyway. Our pilots are all former aerospace test pilots. They're used to it. The Zathari mechs were powerful, precise, devastating. But they moved like what they were. Massive war machines piloted by beings merged with quantum processors, making optimal calculated decisions. The human mechs moved like they were alive. Jessica's pilot, Krelthor, learned her name was Captain Reeves, used her mech's smaller size to slide under a Zathari unit's attack, then launched herself upward using ground-mounted thrusters nobody had noticed. She landed on its shoulder and tagged it with a training marker before launching away. The speed mech was everywhere at once, its pilot making split-second decisions that no computer would ever risk. It skidded around corners on one leg, used walls as launching points, turned the training ground into a 3-dimensional battlefield. The heavy unit simply refused to stop. Where Zathari mechs tactically retreated from overwhelming firepower simulations, it charged forward, its pilot screaming something that the translators rendered as, "Witness me." The course was supposed to take 30 minutes. The humans finished in 12. When Captain Reeves climbed out of her mech, she was drenched in sweat, breathing hard, grinning like a maniac. That, she said, was fun. Can we go again? That evening, Krelthor sat with Dr. Chen in his quarters, trying to understand what he'd witnessed. Your mechs are smaller, lighter, less powerful in every measurable way, he said. Yet you won, how? Chen sipped her tea thoughtfully. You designed your mechs to be perfect war machines. Neural interfaces, quantum processors, 15 years of training to merge pilot and machine into one optimal combat unit. Yes, the most efficient system possible. We designed ours to be fun, Chen said simply. We gave experienced pilots machines that responded to instinct, that rewarded creativity, that felt less like military equipment and more like extensions of themselves. Your pilots are part of the machine. Ours play with them. Play, Krelthor repeated. We spent our entire evolutionary history competing, Chen continued, not just for survival but for sport. We race each other. We fight each other under agreed rules. We turn everything into a game. When you showed us your battle mechs and asked if we wanted to compete, she smiled. How could we possibly say no? Krelthor was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, what would happen if humanity ever faced a real military threat? Chen's smile faded into something harder. Then we'd stop playing, she said. And Ambassador, I really hope you never have to see what that looks like. Outside, he could hear human laughter and the sound of mechs being prepped for another round. Tomorrow, they'd promised. They'd bring the racing configurations. Krelthor wondered if the Galactic Council truly understood what they'd invited into the stars.